Vision Unchained. Today, you get to sit with the founders. All right. As you already know, I'm Dr. Sean Jones Quedu, orthopedic spine surgeon from Dallas, Texas, Chandler Holderness, and we are going to do the interview for you today.
Awesome. No, thanks for having me. It's funny being on this side of the table after developing so many, different podcasts, different episodes,
Right, right,
and being on
right.
the other side, or even just producing. Um, Man, I'm excited to jump into this. I'm excited about the new venture for Vision Unchained. I think it can help a lot of communities, not just people in communities, but communities themselves, to be able to see that there is still so much opportunity, and that it isn't. You don't have to be the you know you don't have to be born with a silver spoon in your mouth, or have $5 million in seed money to do something to create a great life for yourself.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And what people don't realize, and even as you're sitting across from me as a producer of Vision Unchained, you have had a tremendous journey and have touched many things. I mean, you have your own medical device company. You have been previously an MMA fighter, and then you also dabble in real estate. So there are many things for which you are going to be able to expand upon and help our audience today learn about in regards to the granular details, the steps necessary to be successful in life. So we're gonna jump right into this, and let's take me back to your youth. Where did this begin for you?
Yeah, no. So I'm a native Coloradan. I was raised in Western Colorado, and for people that don't know that, being a black guy in Western Colorado, it's a dot on the paper, right? I think it was like when I grew up there, it was like 0.1% African American or something like that. But I had an awesome upbringing. I absolutely loved living in Western Colorado. Beautiful outdoors, winery areas. Learned to snowboard at a young age. Had an amazing childhood again, and wasn't raised wealthy or anything like that. Was actually definitely lower middle class, um, but it was a great upbringing. I credit a lot of my success to the morals and values instilled in me by my parents.
This is fantastic. So it sounds like there was a great cultural foundation. You weren't born with just opportunities in abundance for you, but yet here you are that you've accomplished many things. Going back then to being in Western Colorado, you an athlete? Were you a straight A student? How did you even get to the point where you say, I'm gonna go off to college and what have you?
So it's a really good question. So my mom had me when she was 19, right? And
Mhm.
so inevitably you're going to be in below the poverty line at that point if you have a kid that young. She finished college while with me in tow, right? So like I'm going sitting in on classes and stuff. So I was observing college classes at the age of like 2, that kind of idea that education was always important throughout all of my family. Um, Now, I always looked over the fence and understood that to advance yourself, there were some opportunities that you needed to take advantage of. Education was one way to do it. And I'm not saying that everyone has to have a college degree to be successful. I actually think there's a lot of stuff you can do now outside of that that's even as advantageous, if not more advantageous, than spending time in college. But I knew that was a pretty critical step to be a step ahead. Um, I was not a great athlete. Like I played football. I played a lot of sports, but I was never really a good athlete, or at least found what sport I was good at until I was well into college. Um,
I think this is important though, to your point. People think sometimes if you're African American, your only way out is athletics. And here it is, you quickly acknowledge that wasn't you.
yeah, no, and that was the funny thing is the expectation again, being in an area that did not have very much that really didn't have a lot of black people in it. All the kind of assumptions that people would have about black people were on me, right? Oh, this guy's got to be the great athlete. He's tall for his age. He's big. He's like well built. He's got to be a good athlete. And I just wasn't. I wasn't a good athlete in the traditional sports. Um, so quickly I learned, like, man, I'm pretty good at thinking. Like I'm always curious. I'll put it that way. Like and maybe this speaks to some kid that has this kind of same issue. And I think we've talked about it before. When you're a kid and you're laying in bed at night, you're not thinking about, at least for me, I wasn't thinking about toys. I wasn't thinking about um what's the next sport I'm going to play. What I was thinking about was how am I going to set myself up to when I'm an adult I get to have all the options that I want. I get to make more decisions.
Love that keyword options. Giving yourself options in life. That is profound. And so you were doing that at a young age.
Young age. And it was, and I didn't, I like looking back now and even watching my kids, I'm like, I'm not sure how much they think about that or anything like that, you know? But as a kid, I like, that was something I always had is I've always had this hunger for more knowledge, for just being curious. And I really do credit a lot of that is like just asking what if or why.
So you had this internal drive, it sounds like, and this curiosity that you were allowed to explore. Who in your environment was also supporting you in that regard, or was this all on your own? Like, did you have a teacher, a mentor, a parent that kind of fed into this curiosity?
I was extremely blessed. Like my mom, and my stepdad they were both awesome at kind of cultivating the curiosity, or at least being supportive in it, to where at 14, I was fortunate enough to save up money and was able to go on a mission trip to Africa for a month. So they sent me out to Africa with like no one else I knew for a month when I was 14. When I was 15, I went and spent a month in Panama and got to spend time living in the Darien jungle amongst the Choco Indians, which was absolutely wild. But like those are the kind of the experiences that help drive my curiosity and understanding that the world is so much bigger. My grandparents used to take me with them when they would go see their other, like my aunts and uncles in the East Coast. So I got a huge amount of exposure there. You look at, I mean, you were raised in the East Coast. How diverse is the East Coast?
Absolutely. Wonderful place. Love the diversity of the East Coast. But Chandler, how were you able to afford these these journeys, these trips at such a young age? You mentioned didn't have maybe the same wealth in the beginning. Well, how were you able to do those mission
It,
trips?
it was fundraising. It was you know, having a Coke stand, like selling hot dogs, doing things like that. It was not, you
So
know,
you were quite entrepreneurial even from way back then.
you had to be. There was no other way you were going to go without, except for people, possibly donating for that. And there was no other way to do it. I mean, I see, and I now, I mean, I would love to send if my kids wanted to go at this point. I'd say absolutely, you're going to go. The experience, I'll help you pay for it, whatever. But yeah, I had to see that experience as a privilege before I understood how much of a privilege it really was.
So for our audience that's listening in, many would look at you and say, yeah, you can do that for your kids, but let's make sure we emphasize the fact that there wasn't someone to just pay your way back then.
No,
You and I would have maybe touched upon this later, but it's such a profound point now. You created opportunity.
absolutely. Like there's a handful of organizations that still do this with kids, where they'll take teens and they'll send them all over the world. Um, but you ultimately still have to create the opportunity by paying your way, right?
Fantastic. Fantastic. No, very admirable. So you had this breadth of experience, which by the way, we could both agree traveling is a very enlightening experience and enriches you and allows you to see the world quite differently. You then go on to university, and even before that, you got into MMA fighting. Where did that come from? You weren't a great athlete, but you felt like you need to get some aggression out. What's going on there?
No, I was always a laid back kid, like
Mm.
super calm. And at the age of 16, 17, I got into jujitsu. And again, in Western Colorado in, 2002, 2003, there weren't very many jujitsu schools. Jujitsu wasn't very big, but there was one guy that was Tom Bolger that had a little jujitsu academy, and he was recovering from an injury from a car accident. So he was doing real light, slow jujitsu, real controlled, and he needed someone to do it. And I was like, all right, yeah, man, you teach me how to do this, and I'll go slow, control. I'll show up every day. And so it was kind of two people helping each other, and I just really enjoyed it. I enjoyed that one of the most chaotic things you can ever be in is a struggle for your life, right? And in jujitsu, you're kind of playing murder. Like you're actively trying to choke each other or hurt each other in some way, or put each other in a spot where obviously you don't want to hurt your partners, but to a point where they're like, all right, I tap. This could be this would if you kept going the way you were going, I would honestly be injured. And so you learn how to find the calm in chaos. And more importantly, In that calm, that's where you can adequately assess a situation and find the opportunity in chaos. And I think that's what really attracted me to the sport of jujitsu.
Now, that way you articulated the calm and the chaos, have you been able to utilize that skill set in other aspects of life?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, obviously, immediately after I went to college and fought MMA and turned pro in MMA,
Turn
that was,
pro. That's
yeah.
right. Go and see his videos on YouTube.
Yeah, I went, once I went pro in MMA, immediately, literally, you had to figure out how to be calm in chaos, to win fights and to be in the right state of mind when you go into those fights. Everyone's like, "Oh, you got to be super aggressive." No, you're not. You're really calm. You're breathing. It's a game. So moving forward, if you can calm yourself down and hold your head and keep your head cool as you're going into a violent situation, there aren't too many situations outside of that are going to really wreck you, that are really going to get you too nervous. And so I'd say
Fantastic.
I carried it. I carried that ability to calm myself down through all my interviews and building a career and the uncertainty of launching businesses, right? Because there's a lot of uncertainty when you launch your business. You kind of, I mean, how many times did you ask yourself, and sometimes do you ask yourself, man, was this the right decision?
Very good, very good. No, I see how you then took that skill set and translated it to other aspects of your life. Now, here it is. You've gone pro MMA, and to be quite honest, most people talk about going pro. They aren't talking about going to school, but yet you still managed to get your undergrad degree while doing this as well. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I moved to Boston when I was 18, started school at Boston University. um, Turned pro. So I was fighting while I was going to school. Um, so I turned pro in MMA while I was out there, and uh, helped me pay for my books, helped me pay for food, helped me get through college, honestly. And then I transferred.
So you weren't on a scholarship, straight A student, had everything covered for you?
So I had some scholarships, but it wasn't like full ride or anything like that, right? Like it was still, I'm still looking at trying to figure out where I'm going to come up with $20,000 to $30,000 a year, right? So 'cause it's expensive. We're probably about at BU is probably about $15,000 to $20,000 a year I had to come up with.
I think it's important for our listeners to understand because they many a times people think everything again is just laid out for those who are successful in life, but you were building it as you were going along.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I transferred from BU to CU CU Boulder after 2.5 years at BU, and believe it or not, that got even more expensive. Um, CU was far more expensive because I didn't have any kind of scholarship or anything like that really. Um, but from there, I was able, and I did have, the nice thing is I did have some financial aid packages as well in both of those in both of those schools. Um, but still, that's still I think CU now is like $60,000 a year or something like that. It's wild, but now it's, it was still expensive back then. But I was able to, again, I knew that I was going to be taking on some debt at school, and I would even advise people now, don't, in retrospect, um, try to avoid taking debt on for undergrad, but it's not always avoidable. And I'm certainly grateful for the experiences I've had in that and was able to pay it off fairly quickly. But yeah, it was not, a lot of the other kids that I saw around me, especially at Boston University, their parents paid for it all. That wasn't even on their radar of how they were going to eat the next day, right? It was not even a thought to them. Meanwhile, I was waiting tables, training for fights, cutting weight, and taking finals all in the same day sometimes.
So let's speak to this though. You did mention as maybe one of your take home diamonds, try not to take on too much debt for an undergraduate degree, but maybe still is acceptable if that is the only way. Try to minimize it, maybe is the advice there. Because it's
Absolutely.
not always that there's going to be financial means to make this happen.
Absolutely. And that's the other side of it is you got to have a balanced perspective. Like I'm a big Dave Ramsey fan, but on the other end of that, I understand too. Like, I don't want someone living on beans and rice and beans and like just skipping meals to avoid debt, right? For when you're in your undergrad. But at the same time, like I came out of undergrad with $75,000 in student loan debt. Like that's a lot. That is that if there's not something that gets you scared to start running, it's that. right? Is having a big load of debt behind you. I'm telling this to a surgeon. Like your education was not cheap, right?
My education was not cheap. This story not being about myself, about others. I didn't have. I went to school on scholarships as well, so I didn't have as much of the debt to worry about. But I certainly would want to suggest that maybe it's worth investing in oneself.
100%. Yeah. And that's the thing is we spend we'll spend 30,000, 40,000, $50,000 on a car and not blink an eye at having a payment on that. At a certain point, if that's the only option you have to go through school and you know that you need to have that degree, go get the degree.
Very good. Very well said. Very well said. So, what did you major in undergrad?
I have a degree in English and I have a degree in Spanish, and then I finished my requirements to go to medical school as well. But obviously, I didn't end up doing that.
Well, hold on. I could be sitting across from a fellow colleague. What happened there?
um, so I took a year off in between after school. Obviously, it's funny. I actually used one of my fights to pay for my MCAT course as well as taking the MCAT, and I just didn't think it was for me. And it's funny. I actually had another surgeon, an orthopedic surgeon, believe it or not, who talked me kind of out of it. He's like,
This was your uncle, if I remember correctly.
yeah,
Right?
yeah. He gave me some really cool insights about it. He's like, man, I don't know that I would get into this right now with the way the healthcare is going. And I totally understand it. And the reason, I ended up taking a year and just trying sales because I had a family friend who was also in medical sales. And I was like, huh, that's kind of interesting. I just want to see what this could be like.
Medical sales.
Medical sales. Yeah. He worked for a company that sold just a bunch of disposables. So like the gloves you'd use in the OR or the masks. Like I think the company was called PSS at the time. And then I think it got bought by like McKesson or Cardinal, one of the two. Um, but and I still credit that guy for helping me like get in because I was really I would have never even knew that there was an opportunity to create a good life doing
So
medical sales.
serendipitously, someone was doing something. You inquired to that individual about their industry. You just kind of noticed him doing this work, and then he was open enough to educate you on medical sales. Or how did that come about organically? Did you seek out that advice? He just kind of stopped in front of you and said, "You need to come over here and learn about this." How did that occur?
So you were always the kid that looked over the fence too, right? You'd always look over the fence and
Certainly.
be like, man, that person has a huge house. I wonder what they do. I, this guy had a nice house, seemed to be pretty happy. And I was just curious. And again, staying curious, I asked him a bunch of questions about what he did and kind of started thinking like, wow, this could actually be an actual career path. Like you don't have to be a doctor, a lawyer, engineer. There's a way that I can go make a good living doing something else.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's very important that people need to understand is sometimes you need to seek out opportunity, inquire, learn more about things around you. Okay. Absolutely. So then how did you take that conversation, that inquiry and turn it into something more tangible?
Well, there's always steps, right? And the first step is you got to learn. And I would even argue that's a step that stays on through the whole time. But my first step in getting into medical sales was I had to get sales experience, business to business sales experience.
Mm.
So I applied to probably hundreds of sales jobs, had no sales experience. Most sales jobs want sales experience, but I needed to get a sales job to get sales experience. So the first job I got was selling credit repair for a company based in Denver, but my territory was Boston, Massachusetts. So I would cold call I'd cold call 1 week, set up appointments for the next week, fly out to Boston, spend that next week doing presentations on credit repair, trying to get bankers and mortgage lenders to send their denied loan applicants that had low credit to me so I could convince them to sign up with my company on a monthly program to fix their credit. Um, Side note, cold calling is one of the best experiences anyone that wants to get into sales can possibly have.
Did they train you? Did they train you to be able to talk to people like that on the phone? How'd you get this skill set?
Eh,
Not everyone's born talker like that.
No, no. And I never thought I'd be a sales guy, to be honest. But I was very competitive because again, I was used to fighting. Like there was just that competitive, curious tick in me. And yeah, they had great training. I still credit Continental Credit. Continental Credit gave me a ton of skills that I still carry today in learning how to sell, the importance of presentation, preparing your presentation. That's very important. So yeah, there was a lot of training with that, and that's really kind of anything is you should always look at if you're getting into an industry. And I tell any new rep that we're interviewing, you got to look at your first 2 to 5 years in an industry as a continued education. It may be your master's degree in this.
Very, very well said. I think a lot of times people don't recognize there's so much that can be learned. They think there's just the job, but and that's it. But there's really everything that is alongside that job, even the people ahead of you and behind you, what their roles are in that job. And if you could understand and learn the full breadth of that, you could be a master of industry.
Yeah, and that's really what it is changing your perspective of I want to be there right now. I'm here working for someone who's there. That's an education opportunity. It's not, oh man, this guy's, treating me like a dog. This guy's working me into the ground. No, no, man. That's education.
Now, I know you didn't stay there. You didn't stay still.
No.
How long would you say you stayed in each one of these roles, and where did you go next as you transitioned in your medical sales journey?
So I stayed in each one of those roles long enough. And that's
Long
something.
enough.
Yeah, yeah, long enough. Credit repair, I got everything I could out of that. I think I was there for about a year, and then I got an opportunity because I had sales experience where I can get into medical sales. I got a job with a company called Meridian Bioscience out of Ohio, based out of Ohio. It moved me to Austin, Texas, and I covered all of South and East Texas from basically from Austin South all the way east to Louisiana. I did that for about a year, and that was amazing because I was able to learn about the how purchasing works in hospitals, which is, as we always talk about being in spine sales, is huge. Is the options and the choices made at the supply chain level at the hospital that basically says, yes, we will buy this, but we won't buy that. Um, from there, I was there for a year. I got an opportunity to get into medical sales in the OR because that was the goal. Is I wanted to be selling to surgeons because I knew that was going to be the higher price point items. You're going to make more in commission off of it. So I got an opportunity to work for St. Jude Medical at the time. Now it's Abbott, selling spinal cord stimulators. So I was a junior rep doing that for about a year and some change. Got a promotion, and which moved me from Austin to Nashville, Tennessee. And I was there in Nashville, and um, kind of built out a little bit of a territory there. It was really interesting because that was an opportunity that I had to be treated unfairly. It was phenomenal. I look back and I'm like, this is great. Um,
Let me make sure I heard this correct. That was an opportunity you had to be treated unfairly.
Absolutely.
Okay, so unfairly, and then said this was great. Those two words seem to be in conflict. So let's expand on that a little bit more.
Yeah. So one of the biggest lessons I took from that job was that if you're in no matter what W-2 opportunity or even in some 1099s, there are going to be some uh, things that happen to you outside of your control that are going to affect your career, right? So for example, I moved to Nashville. They to grow a territory that really didn't exist, and the expectation of the company was that it blows up in the first 6 months, and it was never going to do that. Um, they overhired, so they did territory realignment, and I ended up getting fired. I was the one that was let go, so they didn't have enough business for the headcount, even though I was the most clinically sound at that point. So I was the one that came in with the most experience and uh, was able to start covering cases from day one. No one else was able to cover those cases. No one else. But after they got everyone else up and running, I was also one of the more expensive ones. So got to let them go, right? And that's I hold no ill will towards any of these former employers that I've had, right? Because that taught me the importance of becoming indispensable in and of yourself. You could always be left up to a W-2 realignment or layoff or something like that. But if you just focused on building your skill set, another company's going to be excited to have you anyway.
So your take home diamond there is maybe you feel you had enough of a skill set to maintain your marketability even if you were let go from this company, because
Absolutely.
you captured as much as you could from that opportunity. And then some people, though their egos would be, bruised, they got fired. Where were you on that aspect? Were you not bothered, hurt, let down? I'm the best guy here. Why am I getting fired? And I'm a failure. Why didn't that take control of you? How were you able to avoid that kind of sentiment?
Honestly, like the first few days after, of course it hurts. You know, I, and I always, man, those are the days I spent a lot of time in prayer.
Okay.
I sought a lot of comfort in my faith.
And I need to interrupt. So there was a foundation for you spiritually to support you in that. Because we could say in hindsight, what a blessing it was for that to occur and how I achieved greatness afterwards. But in it, you were hurt. You were
Absolutely.
downtrodden.
Absolutely.
Your faith in God kept you strong despite.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The foundation that was built in me by my family, um, that was built entirely in faith, is what's propelled my career. Right. It's not about your successes and how you react to those as much as it is, dude, how do I get up when I'm down? Right.
Very good.
That's what it is.
And that's what the audience needs to hear. Remember that even as you're telling your story, which you have a phenomenal story, but I want people to remember we're still human, we still hurt,
Yeah.
we still have our struggles, but some of the ways that we persevere are, in this case, for example, your strength in God and moving forward with God in your life. Before I continue even further, there's one other point you mentioned. You were working with a company that was supplying products to the hospital, and then you were able to switch over to St. Jude and become a medical sales rep. What people don't know is that's still not an easy transition. How were you able to get picked up by St. Jude's, or how did you create that opportunity, or were you given that opportunity?
No, I absolutely. I always kept feelers out there. No matter what your job is, you should always take the phone call from the company that's either a competitor or maybe something completely outside of it, especially while you're first developing your career. Because you don't know what you're at that point. I didn't know what I was good at. I kind of had a little bit of an idea, but I didn't know uh where I could really excel at that point, right? I was still trying to figure it out. I was starting to develop skill set. I knew that I was pretty good with people. Um, I knew that I could understand stuff clinically fairly quickly, but it was still blurry. My pathway was still a little bit blurry. So yeah, transitioning from selling supplies to going into the OR and having to sell doctors definitely was difficult. It was very hard.
So did the reps of St. Jude stumble upon you and say, "Hey, we think you could be good at this," and they came to you, or how did they find you, or you find them while you were working?
At Meridian
Yeah.
Bioscience? Great question. I filled out a ton of. I constantly was filling out uh, applications and talking to recruiters because my ultimate goal was still to be a medical device rep in the operating room.
So you never let go of that dream.
Correct.
Kept working at it even while you were doing side jobs. Now I know some individuals out there, they feel like if I can't step into the industry that I want to get into, I'm not doing anything else. I'm just gonna wait. I'm just gonna keep waiting until this opportunity comes. Doesn't sound like the way you've done it. You said, "Hey, I did other things and built up my skill set until I could get to that dream job I was looking for." Is that a fair way of summarizing that?
Absolutely. And to be fair, it would have been a disaster if I would have gotten the dream job as my first sales job. I wouldn't have been ready for that dream job.
Fantastic.
It would have been a nightmare.
Yeah, I see your point there. Great, great. Well said. Well said. We're going to move forward a little bit because you have shown how you have transitioned step by step, getting opportunities, making the most of that opportunity, getting finally into medical sales. But you went from medical sales to having your own company. What happened, buddy? And you got fired. But was the next thing your own, or what
No, it
happened?
wasn't. So from there, I left Nashville. I moved back to Denver. Moved back to Colorado actually to Grand Junction, and then shortly after I got a job with Nuvasive, a large spine company. Right, they sell pedicle screws, anything that has to do with fusions and some arthroplasty devices now. But so I got a job doing that, and the manager kind of asked me, he's like, "Well, do you want to be like a full line spine rep?" And I'm like, "No, I want to be a junior rep under a really good spine rep, right?"
You
But
asked to be a junior guy.
yeah, absolutely.
This is key.
The-
I mean, talk about being humble to say, I still want to learn the game, not I'm big bad enough to step out, do it on my own, give me mine, start me at the top, pay me this. You didn't do that.
No, spinal cord stimulators, what I was selling before in Austin and Nashville, very different than selling fusion devices. So I knew that I didn't know very much about it. So I was like, I want to be under the best guy that you have here. And so I was a junior rep under Brad Varing down in Colorado Springs. The guy is an absolute monster of a worker. He actually won a silver medal in the Olympics in wrestling in 2007. So just one of those type of workers, right? From Nebraska. So just one of those Midwest will grind you out. And so I got to grind with him for a year and really learn what it is to be what it is to be diligent and show up the same way every day, to where the surgeon doesn't have to think about or question if my stuff's going to be ready, if I'm going to be ready. That's something that's not even in his mind. And to the point where even the hospital is coming to Brad, the rep, and being like, "Hey, we need help with this. What do we do? What do we do?" That's completely not even his stuff. So I had the opportunity to learn under him for a year. Uh, moved to South Denver, and fortunately, within me moving to South Denver, uh, the rep that was down here for Nuvasive, the full line rep, quit. And he told me, he goes, "Man, I'm just telling you, you need a 3-year guarantee if you're going to take over that territory, because I know they're going to ask if you want it. It's a really hard territory. South Denver's impossible. It's been one of Nuvasive's poorest performing territories forever, like literally forever. It's never been a good territory for him." But I'm like, "Well, let me see what I can do with it." Um, Came up, took it over, and it was tough. It was really hard. It was, you know, maybe one surgeon using one small product, just using the lateral cage, for example. But everything else, the biologics, the screws, the majority of the case was someone else's. I just had the difficult part that didn't pay out as much. But sure enough, I was really blessed. I was able to connect with some really cool surgeons, and eventually kind of built out a small little territory. Um, to the point where I felt comfortable enough to where I was like, "Man, I can." I looked around and I'm like, I'm with one of the biggest spine companies in the world, but I see all these little spine companies, these small ones that are really innovating. They don't have everything, but they usually do one thing really well. So what if I flew around and just had conversations with a lot of these small companies and said, "Hey, you don't have to pay me like a W-2. You don't have to pay me a salary or anything, but I want a higher amount of commission, and I'll help you get on contract at some of these hospitals I'm at. But I do want to be able to get higher commission on it." And they were ecstatic. They were like, "Absolutely, like let's do it. You help get us in, we'll do it." So then I actually left Nuvasive after that, and so I was with Nuvasive for almost 4 years. Then I left Nuvasive and started my own distributorship. So the difference between a distributorship and W-2. A distributor is basically someone who is 1099. So I'm not paid a salary by any company. However, I'm paid commission off whatever I sell. Kind of, it's eat what you kill. It's a true hunting model. W-2, when I was working for Nuvasive, when I initially came on, I had a salary. They pay for your benefits. They pay for everything else. It's a little bit easier. However, you're told what you can sell, what you can't sell, where you can go to sell, and you can't sell anything outside of Nuvasive. So it's very restrictive. So I traded um, the control and security of a large company for the autonomy and some uncertainty of a 1099 distributorship.
Before we move away from that point, both can be good
100%.
for different individuals.
Different individuals,
Both
different
paths
situations.
can be good. The security and maybe not having all the autonomy is stable. It's a paycheck, and you can do your job, and you can do well and live well. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
an audience needs to hear that. That was a great opportunity. But what's the selling point of doing it on your own? You have more autonomy. But what else? What was really the beacon? What was really speaking to you to say, I need to be over here on the other side?
It's actually funny to be honest. The catalyst that moved me was actually, it wasn't even money, which there's a lot of money on the other side of distribution, or there's no money depending on if you can get business or not.
Mm.
But the thing that moved me was set constraints. So at Nuvasive, I started picking up all this A-lift business, but they couldn't give me sets. So imagine if I was your Nuvasive rep and I said, hey, thank you for these 3 A-lifts that we have today, but we only have 1 set to do it with. Are you cool if we delay the second or third case? Even if we could delay the third case, so I can split this 1 set that's made for 1 case, but I can kind of make it jerry-rigged to work for 2 cases. But then I have to turn over that last set and have it cleaned and reprocessed for the third one. Hey, doc, it's going to delay your case 2 hours. What would you tell me?
Yeah, not gonna work.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
So that's that was kind of the situation I was in. So I had to start using some of these small companies anyway. And so I'm like, wait a minute, they have sets, they have the ability to cover these cases. Let me go look at what else these other little companies have. And the tech was not inferior to Nuvasive's. In a lot of cases, is actually somewhat superior.
The
The
technology.
technology
Yeah.
was, yeah. So that's why that was kind of actually, that was actually my jumping off point. It wasn't about the money. It was more about the autonomy of me being able to take care of my surgeons and the patients, right? Because if you
And
delay,
provide a better service.
that's exactly it,
Look at that.
right?
You wanted to be great at your craft.
That's exactly it. So you look, if I fast forward to now, on a lot of the booking sheets, it just will say, Chandler or Alliance Medical, our distributorship. It won't even have a manufacturer name. It won't say, C Spine or Spine Wave or Precision or Zavation. It'll just say Alliance Medical, because the doctor trusts that we know what that means, that they know we're going to bring what's best for that patient for that time.
Fantastic. Terrific. Terrific. And so you have built this extraordinary distribution company as a distributor of multiple different spine uh, company components, implants, biologics. You didn't stop there.
No.
You have branched out into many other things since developing a very successful distributorship.
Yeah.
Speak to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know,
Oh, by the way,
oh,
why didn't you stop there? That was good enough, wasn't it?
it's the burden of curiosity, right? So you do the same thing of where you get somewhere and you're like, man, how can we make this better? Um, and for me, it was looking around, and in Denver, very competitive market. There are tons of spine surgeons here, way too many spine surgeons. And so I looked and I was like, man, well, how can I better partner with these guys? Why are they? I, I want these guys to stay private practice because they're able to to be able to have some leverage over the hospitals. They're able to still negotiate with insurance independently of the hospital. how can I better partner with these guys? And I noticed that, so many spine surgeons in Denver fail quickly because they don't have enough patients. They literally don't have enough people coming in the door. And so I was like, what if I, again, I'm going to go back to the spinal cord stimulator days. The spinal cord stimulator reps are fantastic at managing and observing and controlling the referral patterns between the pain doctors, the PCPs, and the spine surgeons. And I learned that from them. And I was like, how can I build this model out more? And so I was like, well, how do people sell today? A lot of things that are sold to you are sold online. It's you Googling, for example, I always use this as an example. My 5-year-old, when he was getting ready to play soccer, a couple of years ago, I had to figure out, oh, I need to get him cleats. Where do you find 3-year-old's cleats? So I Googled 3-year-old boys cleats. Once after I Googled that, I went over to my Facebook and I was scrolling and I started seeing ads for little kids' cleats. Like, what if we could figure out how to do the same thing with spine surgeons and patients? Patients don't necessarily know who the good spine surgeon is or who's not. So, what if they were able to have access to success stories from that spine surgeon, and they were able to agnostically um, hear what that guy's about? And so we started doing that, and so we built a studio. I felt like, I remember it was in the middle of Nuvasive uh, sending me cease and desists for violating a non compete because I left Nuvasive and took those surgeons with me. That I was super stressed, obviously, like had a ton of pressure. And I wouldn't even say actually, I wasn't stressed, but I definitely had a lot of pressure. Um, but I remember one day in prayer, I just felt like God told me buy a camera, and I had no idea. I was like, man, a camera. What am I gonna do with a camera? I have no propensity towards photography or anything like that. But I did it, and then I just kept getting instruction of, all right, now let's start filming this. And then it started becoming more clear as I got closer to it, and that's when we created Dark Water Consulting. And I have two fantastic partners in the business, and it's all based on the idea of, let's get patients to physicians in a more modern way. Um,
And that modern way is to create video content
Create video
of
content.
these doctors
Yep,
showing who they are and sharing that via the mediums, the social media aspects to the patients and
absolutely.
giving them an opportunity to learn about their doctors beforehand.
100%. And that's the other thing too, is you look at every other surgeon's website right now, and it's just a static website with a picture of them and then a blurb about who they are and all their credentials. It doesn't move you unless you were already referred to them. Um, and so we created this company separate from our distributorship, um, Dark Water Consulting, and got really good at creating videos. We were terrible at it at first, but I knew we had to be bad at it first. So I was comfortable being bad at it for a long time. And we just kept learning and failing and learning and failing and learning and failing until we were able to put together a program and have more data than almost really any other company in the medical marketing space. And so um, we built that out. And then after a few years, we ran ads for probably about 3 years before we started picking up commercial customers. And so we just kept running them and collecting data, learning how long it takes, learning what needs to go into the market, understanding that nothing's going to happen overnight, that, first 3 to 6 months, we're going to be looking at data. That's what we're doing. And then after that, we're able to kind of use that data to geo-target the right areas and start generating patients. So it's made us kind of nationwide in that way.
Let's talk about what I interpreted as your resiliency to try and fail. I mean, a lot of people, the idea of failing at all is just like, well, I'm not going to bother. Or fail once and like, well, that didn't work and I'm done, moving on. You kind of set this up and I'm wondering, at the time, did you know this is going to be a struggle? This isn't going to be great, but we got to keep chipping away at it. Speak to how you were able to do that foundationally. What in you, or what did someone tell you that allowed you to continue to do that?
Most things that I've had success in, I had to have a healthy relationship with failure. The only way to get good at jujitsu is to get submitted over and over and over and over and over again. And the way success happens in jujitsu when you're brand new, um, is you usually have one or two people that you're working out with, and you're like, man, this guy just submitted me 10 times
And that's to defeat you
to
or
defeat
beat
you.
you.
Yeah. To get
Yes.
you in a position where you have to tap out, choke you, put you
Mhm,
in a position where you fail,
mhm.
where you're failing. And he may submit you, 10 times in a single match. But then the next time you do it, maybe it's only 8 times. The next time you do it, maybe it's only 5 times. And the success is in that failure. You're still failing, multiple times over and over again, but the success is the failure isn't as bad. You're a little more comfortable. You're a little more knowledgeable. You know how to stay out of the big failure more. And so I really attribute that's a lot of it is just having a healthy relationship with failure.
Also, maybe you didn't take the failure, case in point, as you were developing the media company, Dark Water Consulting, you didn't take the failure as a reflection of you and you're done. You
Can't
didn't take it too personal, maybe I
no,
should say.
you have to leave ego out of it. at that point, right?
Ah, there you go. Now you're telling them something they can use.
A good a bad idea thought up by you is still a bad idea, even though it's thought up by you, and you have to recognize it as that, right? Um, and that's kind of what like you have to look at failure as is like, okay, cool, that part didn't work, but how can I improve on that?
Fantastic. How do you pivot, adjust, improve upon it, keep moving forward?
Yeah, you can't go through a maze successfully without hitting a wall, right?
Absolutely. Fantastic. So you had this opportunity to build your distributorship, excuse me. You've had opportunity to build a media company. Congratulations to you. It is thriving. It's a
No.
fantastic entity. And and then still you went and said, time to buy some real estate.
So yeah, so the real estate piece in Denver, if anyone is fortunate enough or unfortunate enough to live here, the real estate is extremely high now, and it went up very quickly. So while I was still at Nuvasive, I bought a house in an area that maybe wasn't the nicest area at the time, but there's some key signs you can look at. Just reading and educating yourself. Um,
So let's pause there for a moment. Just reading and educating yourself. I've given you a lot of leeway and you've told a great story. For you, was a lot of this self-made or did you have mentors along the way? Did you seek out advice or again it was just more so you'd find a resource, read about it, understand it to the full extent and move forward? How were you able to continue to find new avenues and move into different spaces?
you have to commit to curiosity. If you don't commit to curiosity, if you don't know something, you'll just shrug your shoulders and move on to the next thing. Right. So, but when I was like, all right, maybe I need to, the rent's rising. Every year rent will go up. How do I make that a fixed expense? I have to buy a house. So I looked in different areas and
Researched on your own
I
or had
researched on my
or
own.
had a resource? Did you
Now,
have a
to be
person?
fair, I did. My father-in-law was my realtor. And so I leaned on him heavily.
Okay. So you sought out mentors.
Yes, absolutely. You have to.
Okay. And I think again, the audience needs to hear that. How did you, well, this was your father-in-law, but did you just pull him aside one day as you guys were at lunch and say, "Hey, I'd like to learn more about this." And then had another meeting with him? How did you engage others to give you what they had as their talent so that you can grow?
So again, I'll go back to it. You have to commit to curiosity. So it was me going to him and saying, all right, you have done more of what I want to do than I have done. So, which is buying a house, right? These are so who do I go to for funding? Who do you go to for funding? Oh, great question, Chandler. This is who the mortgage guy is that I use. Awesome. He's good enough for you to you've made, you know, possibly hundreds of transactions with him. Cool. I'll go to him. Then every time then I would go look at these houses, right? And then from that point I would say, "Hey, Joel, I want you to come and look at this house and tell me what I don't see about it. Where are their problems? What do you think the market around this is going to look like in the next few years?" And so absolutely, I want to I want the shortcut, and maybe if I can avoid a few pitfalls that someone else has made and they're kind enough to give me that kind of mentorship, I'll take it all day.
Fantastic. I feel like you've given me so much and I could probably answer some of these next questions, but I want to give you an opportunity to reflect. Throughout your journeys, individuals have what I like to refer to as a superpower, which might be something mundane or basic, but it actually is a talent that you have. If you would reflect on who you are and what you seem to do different than others, what would you say is your superpower?
I am more comfortable being uncomfortable than most. It's cause it's a symptom of resilience. So I can just honestly I can just outlast most people in uncomfortable situations.
Fantastic. No, and that's key. You're able to stay calm and in control. By the way, I know you didn't go on to become a medical doctor, but had you gone on to become a medical doctor, that would have been a great skill set in a complex surgery. You need to stay calm, cool, and collected, and take care of that patient. And you can't lose it. I mean, that patient's depending on you to do your job and do it great. And so that is an asset to a surgeon and something that would have boded well. Obviously, you have done great in life without becoming a doctor, and I'm extremely impressed and proud of all your accomplishments. But definitely a great skill set all the same. Um, if you were to say have a daily mantra or an alert that came up on your phone daily to remind you of something, what would be a message you would want to see or share with others and have pop up on their phones?
Uh, it's a great question. I would honestly say commit to curiosity. Commit to curiosity. And what I mean by that is if if you decide, I want to change my life to for something to I want my life to look different in a year from now than it looks now, then you've got to commit to trying something different that you don't know about. You don't have to have it figured out. And that's the cool part about it. None of us have it figured out. That's this big facade that everyone thinks is, oh, the other guy, look at that guy. He has it figured out. That guy has it figured out. We're figuring it out. I'm comfortable not knowing. I'm comfortable trusting God to fill in the gaps. Um, I don't know. like I honestly don't know a lot of times. But it's the commitment to curiosity that helps you to take the next step, to help to open the next door. And the other side of it is it's not committing to curiosity for a second. It's committing to curiosity even when it gets rough.
No, that's a great point. And understanding that there are going to be bumps in the road. You don't necessarily have to quit or feel like a failure. Maybe necessary to pivot, but look for still other opportunities. Also, something I think that's important and that you did execute on, that I want the audience to understand more about. Really take advantage of where you are. Get the most out of where you are at the time. I think people miss so much when they could have gained more for where they were, even if they didn't like the situation they were in. Would you agree to that?
I absolutely agree with that. In most situations, if you just wait it out, you'll come out on top. Even if it's it could be the worst day you've had. And I always have liked this piece of advice. Never quit a job on your worst day, right? Because you don't know if it's emotional, you don't know what it is, the reason you might quit. And if you're kind of the last one left at that point, everyone else has quit, there's opportunity there. There's there is so much opportunity in chaos, right? Like that was something I learned from fighting is that everyone's like, oh, well, you gotta, when you're in the middle of a fight, are you just aggressive? Do you get mad? Nah, man. I spend a lot of my energy keeping myself calm, you know, because I know that if I'm calm in the middle of the chaos, I can better evaluate the situation and make the best decisions that there are in that chaos. In that chaos, I can find opportunity.
There it is. Well, I tell you what, Chandler, this has been an amazing session, and I'm just so thankful to have you as a business partner as well as a guest on the show today. Those key words here at the end. Back in the day, in the '90s, it would end up on a T-shirt, right? So maybe we need to capitalize on that and find another industry, do some T-shirts. But no, this has been fantastic, and I'm honored. Thank you so much for getting on with me today and chit
Absolutely.
chatting.
Absolutely.
And yeah, let's continue to build something great and continue to have other episodes of Vision Unchained and get some great hosts in and continue to share with the community and grow this and help people find their inspiration with us so they can continue to grow and thrive out there in the community.
Oh man, I'm so looking forward to being able to empower our communities by just lifting their vision, right? Like the idea of like the network around you, right beside you, the success next door to you that you may not know about. We have some awesome guests lined up to come on that are inspiring to me for sure. And I can't wait to release their story into our communities.
Absolutely. The idea that Vision Unchained is going to really help them see that, to your point, the success story is right next door. We have success within our community, and we're trying to help people understand those stepping stones to continue to do that. And yeah, let's go get it.
Absolutely. Awesome.
Fantastic.